So I want to briefly touch on Dan Campbell. The 49ers and the Lions met in the NFC Championship game, and the 49ers ended up winning 34-31. But the context of this victory was the Detroit Lions at one point, could you believe it? They were up 24-7. And to be honest with you, look, I picked the 49ers to win, but I picked the Lions to cover that point spread because the Lions, they were 7.5 point underdogs heading into the game. And I felt, man, I think that's a little bit kind of disingenuous by Vegas to give the 49ers 7.5 points. I understand they're a talented team, but even me, I was surprised with the rage and the force and the explosion that the Lions came out and played with early on in that game. It just seemed like they were going to be the aggressors. They were going to be the bullies that punched San Francisco in the mouth. I mean, the power, the speed, the physicality of their football team early in that game, it was something fun and pretty shocking to watch. I mean, but unfortunately, the 49ers come back, complete the 17-point comeback, the largest comeback in conference championship history, oddly enough. There were several fourth downs that the Detroit Lions did not convert. There was a turnover in the second half, and it just seems like the Detroit Lions kind of melted down. And, you know, if you're Dan Campbell, he said it in his press conference, it just seems like this is one of those situations where you may have let one get away. An opportunity to play in Super Bowl 58, and you kind of choked it away a little bit. Now, I understand that Detroit, they haven't really been there really ever because this is the first time they've been winning playoff games in over 30 years. So there is a component of, okay, maybe we peaked about a year or two early, and we'll eventually get over the hump. But if you're a great head coach, you got to finish the job and execute when it matters if you have a 17-point lead. And it just seems like Kyle Shanahan, even when down 17 points, he coached circles and laps around Dan Campbell. I thought the coaching gap was massive in this game. You could tell. And even at the end of the game, the clock management situation stuff from Dan Campbell, it was bad. It was just really, really bad. And I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he was thinking. But let me just say right here, right now, Dan Campbell must take another significant leap forward if the Detroit Lions want to win the Super Bowl and continue to progress forward. I understand that, it's easy to pile on Dan Campbell now because, he finally lost and his fourth down aggressiveness kind of fell flat in his face finally. But I understand that Dan Campbell did a lot of great things, and what got him here was his aggressiveness. So I admire the fact that he went down doing what got him there, but at the same time, there was a situation where, you kicked the field goal when you could have went for it on fourth down and gone to the half up 28-7 as opposed to 24-7. So if you're going to be all in on aggressiveness, be all in on aggressiveness. Now, it's going to be interesting because there's now a target on Dan Campbell and the Lions' back. They're in a division with the Green Bay Packers, who are a young team that just won a playoff game this year, and there's a lot of upside potentially in Green Bay. Minnesota has a lot of good players, and Kirk Cousins potentially coming back, next year, and they could be really good. Even Chicago got a lot of draft picks, some good young players, a defense that's young and kind of flies around a little bit. We'll see what Justin Fields can become. Maybe they draft Caleb Williams and change, the franchise a little bit. But all I'm saying is that division is not going to get any easier. And when it comes to the landscape of the NFL, if you're a head coach, you have to, and an organization, you have to ask the question, can I go against the likes of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Andy Reid and actually come out on top? That's the question you have to ask yourself, because those are the three big boys kind of right now in the NFL. And when it comes to those three head coaches versus everyone else, it seems like there's kind of a gap. I mean, seriously, Dan Campbell compared to Sean McVay, I understand that, the Rams lost to the Lions this year, but as far as just head coach versus head coach, Sean McVay versus Dan Campbell, kind of a gap. Dan Campbell versus Kyle Shanahan, kind of a gap. Dan Campbell versus Andy Reid, kind of a gap. And deep down, even Detroit Lions fans that are realistic kind of know this. And I think the Lions organization kind of knows this. And it's very easy to say right now, oh, Dan Campbell, he's not good enough to get it done. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is he must take another step forward if this team wants to win a Super Bowl. I mean, folks, we're in the Patrick Mahomes era. I mean, not only do you have to deal with Patrick Mahomes, but for the foreseeable future until he retires, you got to deal with Andy Reid as well. Whether you're in the AFC or the NFC, you more than likely probably have to go through a Pat Mahomes to win a Super Bowl. And even if it's not Pat Mahomes, it's going to be potentially a Lamar Jackson. You know, even a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's really, really good and actually kind of outplayed Patrick Mahomes last year in a playoff game, even though he lost. The NFL is more and more dynamic when it comes to quarterback and head coach, especially on offense. So it's not me being a hater saying this version of Dan Campbell and the Lions is not quite good enough to win a Super Bowl. All I'm saying is they must continue to grow. Campbell must continue to progress forward. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the good thing about Dan Campbell and the Lions is they can go back to the drawing board, see what they did well, see what they did wrong, and improve and get better. I think the future can definitely be bright in Detroit, but if the Detroit Lions want to win the Super Bowl, they will need to make sure that Dan Campbell takes a significant leap forward. I believe he can, but only time will tell.